Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are jumping into source material that, a lot of you have shared with us, and it's all centered on, well, one of the most frustrating biological realities for women in midlife.
Right. That whole challenge of navigating nutrition and weight gain when perimenopause and menopause hit.
Exactly. And the sources we looked at, from accredited dietitians to clinical reviews, they really get the emotional side of it. It's that wall you hit, that moment when the diet and exercise routine you've trusted for, 20 years, suddenly just stops working.
Or even worse, it feels like it's working against you.
Yes, a total betrayal by your own body. We even had one source, a dietitian, who told this story. It's so relatable. She was about to go on stage for a health lecture, and the button on her pants literally popped off.
Wow.
She called it her perimenopause wake-up call.
Yeah.
And that feeling, that unshiftable meno belly, that's really the mission for us today.
It is. And what we've pulled together is a really comprehensive look at the biology behind that frustration. But more importantly, we have the actual strategies, the nutritional and physical plans that are proven to work with these changes, not against them.
So moving from frustration to an action plan.
Exactly. Our mission here is to unpack the why. Why your metabolism is shifting because of these huge hormonal changes. Because if you understand that, you can accept that the old rules are out the window. And then we can get into the new evidence-based rules that are really about long-term health, not just what the scale says.
Okay, let's start right there with a problem. Why does this weight gain, and especially this fat redistribution, feel so inevitable? Why do so many women feel like they're hitting a biological wall that even, super clean eating can't break through?
So the core driver, the main thing behind all of this, is the decline in estrogen levels. Estrogen isn't just for reproduction. It plays this massive role in your metabolic function and your body composition. And as it drops, two really big things happen at once that kind of sabotage your metabolic rate. Okay. So first, there's a real quantifiable slowdown in your basal metabolic rate, your BMR. Our sources put a number on it. Women in midlife might be burning 250 to 300 fewer calories per day.
Wow, just like that, without changing anything.
Without changing a single thing. It's like your daily energy budget just quietly shrinks.
And when you think about it, 300 calories, that's a lot. That's basically a healthy snack or a good walk you'd have to cut out just to stay even with where you were before.
Precisely. The margin for error gets so much smaller. And that slowdown is then compounded by the second factor, which is maybe even more dangerous.
Okay.
It's where your body decides to store fat. The hormonal shifts literally trigger a redistribution. Fat storage moves away from the hips and thighs and goes straight to your midsection. It becomes visceral fat.
The apple shape instead of the pear shape.
Exactly. Postmenopausal women are 5 times more likely to develop abdominal obesity. And this is so critical because that abdominal fat is metabolically active, but in a really bad way. It seriously impairs your insulin sensitivity. And that, in turn, just skyrockets your risk for some really serious health issues.
Like heart disease and diabetes.
Heart disease, type 2 diabetes, and even some specific cancers like breast and colon cancer.
Which is why it's so important for everyone listening to hear this. This is not some kind of personal failure.
Absolutely not.
It's a biological shift.
Yeah.
A huge one. And it's happening at the same time as age-related muscle loss is kicking in.
Right, sarcopenia, which starts way back in our 30s. We lose, like 3 to 8% of our muscle mass every decade?
And less muscle means a slower metabolism.
You've got it. So you have estrogen dropping, which lowers your BMR, and you have less muscle, which lowers it even further. It's a dual-pronged metabolic attack.
Okay, so that really frames the problem. Let's pivot to the solutions. If the old rules are broken, what's the new playbook? Our sources were really aligned on this. They all said there's no single best diet, but then they all basically pointed to the same pattern.
Yes. The clinical consensus, it points directly at adopting a Mediterranean-style diet. That's the foundation.
The Mediterranean diet comes up so often. What is it about that style of eating that makes it so uniquely suited for women going through these changes?
Well, it works because it tackles the systemic inflammation that makes so many menopause symptoms and metabolic problems worse. It's naturally anti-inflammatory with all the healthy fats, the fruits, the vegetables.
Okay.
It also supports your gut health, which is tied into how your body processes hormones. And maybe most importantly, it protects your heart and your brain.
The two areas that become much higher risk for women in midlife.
Absolutely. The components are simple, really. A huge emphasis on vegetables, fruits, whole grains, legumes, healthy fats like olive oil and nuts.
And limiting the bad stuff.
Right. strictly limiting the refined grains, the processed foods, and especially the added sugars.
Okay, now this is where it gets really interesting for me. Let's talk macros, because the sources were, almost screaming from the rooftops about protein.
Protein is the metabolic hero during menopause. It just is. It's absolutely critical for two goals that are, completely intertwined. First, fighting that sarcopenia, that muscle loss.
You keep your metabolism from falling off a cliff.
Exactly. And second, increasing satiety, that feeling of fullness. It is your best friend when you have that smaller calorie budget to work with.
So what are the actual targets? Because I think people are often really surprised by how high the number is.
It's robust. The goal is 0.8 to 1.2 grams per kilogram of body weight. But to make that more practical, the best advice is to aim for a solid 20 to 30 grams of high-quality protein at every single meal.
Every meal.
Every meal. Hitting that number is what really maximizes muscle protein synthesis.
Can you make that a little more tangible? Like, what does 30 grams of protein look like on a plate?
Sure. 30 grams it's significant. It's about a 4-ounce cooked chicken breast, or a piece of salmon that's about the size of your palm.
Okay.
It could also be a full cup of low-fat Greek yogurt or cottage cheese. Those are fantastic for breakfast. And we really want you to aim for 2 servings a week of fatty fish like salmon or mackerel. That gets you the omega-3s you need for your heart.
All right, so beyond protein, the conversation around carbs seems to shift completely. It's all about quality, and specifically the glycemic index, or GI.
Yes. Low GI is the focus.
Why is managing that so much more critical now than it was, say, 20 years ago?
It goes back to what we said about that visceral fat.
Okay.
That fat around your abdomen makes you less sensitive to insulin. So when you eat high GI carbs, white bread, crackers, sugary stuff, your blood sugar shoots up. Your body then has to pump out a ton of insulin to deal with it. But because you're less sensitive, it struggles. And that contributes to more weight gain.
And a higher risk for type 2 diabetes.
Precisely. So your focus has to be on carb quality. Things like intact grains oats, quinoa plus beans, and low GI fruits and veggies like apples, berries, and leafy greens.
And what about fiber? That's another huge piece of this.
Fiber is non-negotiable for blood sugar control, for gut health, for your heart. The target is high. You should be aiming for at least 25 to 30 grams a day. Some of our sources even push that to 30 to 45 grams for the biggest cardiovascular benefit.
Which you're only going to get if you're really intentional about eating those beans, nuts, and vegetables.
Exactly. And if there's one thing to limit, the thing studies show really helps keep weight off long term, it's cutting back on desserts and sugary drinks.
The biggest insulin spikers.
The absolute biggest.
So let's talk about symptom relief. We've covered weight, but what about things like hot flashes, mood, and especially bone density?
For hot flashes, the thing that comes up a lot is phytoestrogens.
Right, from soy.
Exactly. These are compounds, specifically isoflavones, in things like edamame, tempeh, miso. They act like a very weak form of estrogen in the body, and they can potentially help ease some of those fluctuations.
But I noticed the sources said the science on this is a bit debated. What was the main takeaway on relying on soy for symptom relief?
The biggest thing is that the effects can vary wildly from person to person. It really depends on your specific gut microbiome and its ability to process these compounds.
So it might work wonders for one person and do nothing for another.
Exactly. The takeaway is, look, it's a healthy food, it's a great protein source, so absolutely integrate it. But don't count on it as your sole medical intervention if your symptoms are severe.
And what about things to avoid for symptoms?
Yeah, there are some classic triggers to limit. Caffeine, alcohol, spicy foods, and refined sugar. They can all basically raise your core body temperature and worsen hot flashes.
And bone health is a huge one. Estrogen is so important for bone density.
It is. The loss of bone density after menopause can be rapid, so getting enough calcium and vitamin D is paramount.
Which brings us back to things like low-fat yogurt and cottage cheese.
Right, which also hit those protein goals. It's all connected. You also want to make sure you're getting enough vitamin C and B vitamins, as they're also cofactors for bone health.
Okay, let's pivot to exercise. That hour of cardio we all got used to in our 30s.
Yeah.
Is that still the best bet for changing your body composition in midlife?
Not even close. Not if your goal is to reshape your body and boost your metabolism. Now, cardio is still essential for heart health. The recommendation is still 150 minutes of moderate aerobic activity a week. But the real game changer is resistance training. It emerges as the #1 tool for metabolic maintenance. The full prescription is 150 minutes of cardio plus at least 2 full-body muscle-building sessions per week. That means lifting weights, using resistance bands,
Why is that so much more effective than cardio alone at this stage?
because it's the only thing that directly fights back against that age-related muscle loss.
Sarcopenia again?
Sarcopenia again. Muscle is metabolically expensive tissue. It burns calories even when you're just sitting there. So by building or even just maintaining your muscle mass, you are directly propping up your BMR. You're offsetting that 300-calorie drop from estrogen loss. It is simply the best way to change your body composition.
It's so clear that diet and exercise are the foundation.
Yeah.
But the sources also really hammered home the impact of, well, everything else, like sleep and stress.
They are completely intertwined with your metabolism. Insomnia, fatigue, they're so common during menopause because of night sweats and hormonal shifts. And that lack of sleep makes your cortisol levels rise,
The stress hormone.
the stress hormone. And high cortisol makes your hunger hormones like ghrelin go crazy. It pushes you to crave quick, sugary fixes for energy. It's a vicious cycle.
So managing stress and improving sleep are just as important as what's on your plate.
Non-negotiable pillars of success. A really actionable tip we saw was to eat dinner at least 2 hours before bed. It helps with digestion and sleep quality. And something as simple as staying hydrated can help metabolic function and even reduce the impact of night sweats.
Okay, so this brings us to the reality on the ground. We hear this from our listeners all the time. They feel like they're doing everything right, following a spot-on plan.
Yeah.
And they're still struggling. The weight loss is just agonizingly slow, maybe 20 pounds in a whole year. And the plateaus are brutal. How do we address that?
The first step is to adjust the expectation. Weight loss still comes down to creating a negative energy balance, a calorie deficit. But now, with that lower BMR, the margin for that deficit is just razor thin and really unforgiving.
So what's the safe target?
The recommendations suggest a reduction of about 500 to 700 calories from your current needs. But, and this is a huge but, you have to be careful not to go too low, dipping below 1,200 calories a day long-term is a bad idea. It can lead to nutrient deficiencies and can actually slow your metabolism down even more.
So that 20 pounds in a year, which feels so slow and frustrating.
That's actually a healthy, sustainable, and realistic target. The mindset has to shift to slow, sustainable loss, about half a kilo to a kilo a week, or aiming for about 5 to 10% of your total body weight.
The sources also brought up some popular strategies like intermittent fasting and, just meticulous tracking. What was the verdict on those?
Intermittent fasting, or IF, is really popular, and for good reason. Things like a 168 window seem to help a lot of women with insulin resistance and cravings. For many, it just provides a structure that's really helpful when your appetite signals are all over the place.
But it's not for everyone. What about simple tracking?
Tracking is key. Especially at this stage, using a food diary or a food scale is so helpful, not just for calories, but to make sure you're actually hitting those high protein and fiber goals.
Right. I think a lot of people would be shocked at what their portion sizes actually are once they measure them.
Oh, absolutely. What you think you're eating versus reality can be very different. And the sources had an advanced insight for people who are really struggling despite doing everything right.
Okay.
The option of metabolism testing through something called indirect calorimetry.
That sounds intense. What is that exactly?
It's a specialized test where they measure your oxygen consumption and carbon dioxide output. It allows them to determine exactly how many calories your body is burning at rest, and more importantly, what fuel you're using, fat or sugar.
So it could tell you if your body just isn't burning fat efficiently.
Exactly. And that kind of personalized data can help you make really targeted changes to your diet that you might not have even considered.
To wrap this up, let's talk about the most practical, encouraging tips. What are the easiest habits someone could start right now?
The one mantra I saw over and over was add, don't subtract.
I like that.
Don't start by thinking about all the things you have to eliminate. Start by focusing on adding in fiber-rich foods, lots of vegetables, and getting enough protein. Those things will naturally crowd out the less healthy stuff.
And meal prep.
Strategic meal prep is a lifesaver. Batch cook some quinoa, portion out your chicken or fish, chop up veggies. It just removes the decision fatigue when you're tired and hungry.
It's all about consistency, not perfection.
Consistency over sporadic perfection every single time.
So we've taken a really deep dive here. The message from all the dietitians and clinicians seems undeniably consistent. You have to aggressively prioritize protein, choose low GI foods, get that resistance training in to protect your metabolism, and then really lock down those lifestyle habits like sleep.
And it's so important to remember this isn't a temporary crash diet. These are essential long-term health strategies. This is about managing your risk for heart disease, for osteoporosis, for type 2 diabetes. This is a journey for your long-term health, no matter what the number on the scale is doing week to week.
Absolutely. And, as a final thought, our sources did note that beyond lifestyle, there are other options, like hormone replacement therapy or weight loss medications. So since lifestyle is always the foundation you have to build on, here's something to think about. Considering the huge hormonal impact on your metabolism, how might medical support redefine what's actually an achievable goal for weight management in midlife, especially if you feel like you're doing everything right and still hitting that wall? Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the source material. We'll talk to you next time.